Okay,
Oscar
Jess,
away.
Let's go take a dab.
well, you know what? I was trying to get a dab earlier, but you know what? Let's do this. Thanks for bearing it all. Tell me, how do you get this full melt bubble hash?
How do you get full melt bubble hash? Well, it starts with a seed, and it starts with a lot of knowledge. And sometimes it starts with terroir, and other times it starts with an indoor grow. The coined term full melt bubble happened in the 90s, in around 99. I started the bubble bag company and didn't want to call it hash because it wasn't hash. I remember the year before I started the bubble bag company, the BC Compassion Club got this big amount of Afghan hash. And Hillary, being Hillary, was like, let's send it to the lab and test it. And it came back a whopping 5% THC. Hey, I wonder what the other 95% was. Ooh, nothing good, trust me. Sorry to ruin that for you, but 95% of the Afghan hash that was at the Compassion Club was unknown. It wasn't cannabis, it wasn't cannabinoids, it wasn't terpenes. So when I first made the bubble hash in 98, 99, here was this hash that would melt into a liquid and turn into a puddle. And it was so strong, it was completely unlike anything anyone had ever seen at the time. And so I was at the Cannabis Cup with my mentor, Skunkman Sam, and he was really the only other person in the world that cared about this stuff as much as I did. So we're like geeking out on it, and he's got his little pipe, and he's like, look, like when it's really good quality, it'll fully melt. And yeah, and then he's like, and if it's exceptional quality, it'll create clear domes. And so we came up with the term full melt and full melt clear dome, which was when the dome bubbles up on the screen. People aren't smoking on screens anymore, but back in the 90s, that's how we were smoking. We were using matches because we didn't want to suck the butane off the lighter into the pipe. We were custom making our own stainless steel screens that were tight enough that would allow the hash not to melt through. And so that was sort of the birth of this full melt hash. Now, it was a bit of an elusive unicorn because only the people who grew the most exceptional cannabis would get hash that melted like that. So if the plant wasn't grown to perfection and wasn't allowed to express its cannabinoid and volatile organic compound profiles to the highest level, then you just kind of had mints. And so when I first started selling the bags, I'd have random people from the like middle of Arkansas, and they'd send me a picture and be like, "Is this good? Like it's weird. It's all sticky and it's melting when I try to smoke it." And I'm like, "You literally just made the best hash in the world. Congratulations." But the other 99 people out of 100 were like, "Hey, my hash is like sandy and it won't stick together. How do I get it to melt like yours?" And then it was like, well, you spend the next 20 years learning about the symbiotic relationships of mycorrhizospheres and how they can sequester the compounds of the plant, and you learn about terroir and the Appalachia, and you learn about all of these things that literally take decades to learn, or you just spray the weed with butane. And so a lot of the people just took a left turn when their hash came out subpar, and instead of learning how to grow better weed, they just made butane oil. And really, when rosin came out, which was wonderful because now young people weren't blowing up and setting themselves on fire. And I'm not an anti-butane person. I think that if you're a chemist and you have a lab and a class 1 Div 1 room and you want to make, really good butane oil, power to you. What I was against was young people blowing off their hands, burning their house down, burning family members, burning strangers. I thought that was like the worst thing to happen to cannabis since the fucking DEA. Like only the DEA was worse. And then suddenly, really kind and wonderful people were just blowing up because they didn't understand the nature of the gas. They didn't understand how it pooled. They didn't understand that when you see a plug in your wall, inside the plug, it's just sparking like all the time. And so if you like blast off a bunch of butane near an open plug, it ignites and you blow up. And I'm sure everyone saw the stories in the news for this happening. So I was very happy when rosin came out, but the rosin folks did almost the exact same thing as the butane folks, which was, my hash isn't melting. How do I make it a dabbable product? Well, just press it into rosin. So you have this enormous amount of the rosin that's on the market is unfortunately made from like mediocre hash. It's certainly not made from 6-star full melt bubble. We should talk about the star rating a little bit. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the star rating. When Dave and I coined the term full melt bubble, about 5 or 6 or 7 years later, there was these two wild characters from San Francisco. They were called the Bizarre Brothers. Dear friends of mine, and rest in peace to both of them because they both passed away in the last couple of years. Space and Corpy. Amazing bubble hash ambassadors that just promoted the bags from day one, promoted the process, loved the process, and were really just ambassadors of the entire process. And so they were sitting around, they had this little kind of speakeasy type hash bar that they operated in their backyard of their house in San Francisco. And lots of people would always be there and smoking hash and super wild characters. And they started, along with another friend of mine, Jeff Church, the three of them started talking about, you know, the problem with full melt is it's not descriptive enough. And if you'd never seen hash that melted in your life, and you saw some hash that suddenly sizzled and boiled just a little bit, that was now full melt to you. But then someone like me might come along and say, no, 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 look at this. And then you see the hash, instead of melting like lava and being very thick and slow and globular, now it's melting like an ice cube under a propane flame, a torch flame. Like it just liquefies, it dissipates, it disappears into the screen. And so they were like, okay, let's create a star system. Like 1 star is like a sizzle. The hash doesn't change shape, it just sort of sizzles on the top. You see a little bit of moisture minorly boiling. 2 star, kind of the next level, it moves a little bit, it kind of looks like it wants to puddle. Getting into the 3 star, now it's puddling a little bit, it's melting out into a bigger, you know, it's changing its shape. 4 star was what most people for the longest time thought that was what full melt 6 star was, because it did melt substantially. And then you get up into that final 6 star. I mean, 5 star is pretty amazing. If you're a hash snob, you're not kicking 5 star out of bed for eating crackers. It's like, no, no, you can stay, eat the crackers. But 4 star and 3 star and 2 star, just push that off to the side. The 6 star melts like water. It dissipates to almost nothing. There's very little residue if you're smoking it in a banger. Like very little residue. You can smoke it in a terp slurper the same way you can smoke rosin. And so, yeah, just a couple of dudes geeking out on hash, myself and Skunkman Sam, and came up with these terms. And I guess it's been about 24 years now promoting these processes, and I've made hash with definitely many people in this room, including Ramo. We made some.